What's going on, y'all? Philip here.
Hey, Julia here. Today I want to talk to you about 1031 exchange. We're going to talk about what is 1031 exchange, the rules for 1031 exchange, and how we utilized 1031 exchange and sold one property and bought four more properties into our portfolio.
Yes, it's been quite a process,
Mm-hmm.
and we're really excited to share it with you.
Right. So first of all, what is 1031 exchange? So 1031 exchange is a swap of one real estate property for another, allowing capital gains tax to be deferred. So basically, you don't have to pay capital gain tax after you sell property if on the value gained if you use that money to invest in other properties. So it's a tool that's very commonly used by real estate investors. All right, Philip, why don't you tell us some rules about 1031 exchange?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the biggest things we've been dealing with
Mm-hmm.
are how many properties we can buy with
Mm-hmm.
selling the property that we have. So before we get into all the nitty gritty, some
Mm-hmm.
more high level things that we have here. So it has to be a like kind property. So the
Mm-hmm.
property involved must be like kind. This generally means both properties must be investment or business properties, but they can vary in type. So you can have real estate for real estate is
Mm-hmm.
what you're looking for. Some other important things: you need a qualified intermediary. So you can't just go do this yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get someone who does and handles 1031 exchanges to do this for you. Kind of like when you get your taxes done. Yeah, you can go do that yourself, but if you're going to have someone else do your taxes, it needs to be a qualified person to
Mm-hmm.
get those done. So,
Right. Wait, I just want to like amplify on this one. It's not like doing tax that you can still go do it yourself.
no.
You have to have someone else to hold this money in escrow. For example, right now, like we, even though we sold our property, we do not have the money. Someone else have that money, and that's a backing, that's a guarantee that we have for us to close on other properties.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now some numbers we're going to throw at you. These are really important. So, identification period. You have 45 days from when you sell your real estate property that you're doing the 1031 exchange with
Mm-hmm.
to identify other properties that you're going to purchase with that cash that the qualified intermediary is handling for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, you don't have to take the full 45-day period. You can already have a property picked out before you even sell and begin the 1031 exchange.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't buy it beforehand, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's that. And once you identify those properties within that 45-day window, you have 180 days to close on them. So, that is from the start. So, not an additional 180 days from the start of when you sold. So, that 45-day counter starts and that 180-day counter starts.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that makes sense. Then let's see what else. Talked about all that.
Oh,
Exchange or greater
mm-hmm.
value.
Yep.
Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking, like equal or greater value. So the replacement property must be of equal or greater value than the relinquished property to defer all tax. So let's say you, if you're super rich, right? Like you sold a property that's $1 million, and then you decide that you want to downsize, and the property you buy is only 500K. Then the 500K profit from the sale that did not go to real estate property, you have to pay tax on that.
Yeah. So a taxable boot.
Mm-hmm.
You might hear that term thrown around like a boot. We first heard that and we're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, a boot. What does this have to do with anything? Say hi to Luck Luck in the background there. Our cat. Hi
Oh.
Luck. He's just hanging out. But so, for example, we sold our property, one of our properties, it was paid off. So we needed to invest all of that money. We were looking into, oh, we just want to invest, our like the portion we gained, like, oh, we made this percentage from the sale.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to reinvest this portion that we made.
Mm-hmm.
But that wouldn't work like that. If we wanted to take some of that cash out, any of that cash out from that transaction, regardless if it was from a paid off loan, we would have had to pay taxes on that,
Mm-hmm.
which was a little bit annoying to find out, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, so once you've identified your properties, you have a few different percentages that you have to follow. So you might hear these terms thrown around. There's a 95% rule and a 200% rule.
Mm-hmm.
So, Julia, do you want to talk about what those mean?
Sure. So normally, if for one 1031 exchange, so after you sell one property, you can buy three more. So like that is like normal. So by the 45-day period, you can identify up to three properties and then you can close on just one of them if needed,
Yeah,
if
or
you
two,
want to,
or
or
three.
two, right, or three. However, if you identify more than three properties,
Yeah,
so in our situation, if you want to buy four properties, then um, after you identify them, you have to close on all of them. If you don't close on all of them,
95%.
95% rule, which again, like you have to close more than 95%. So unless you're buying 20 properties and only one doesn't work out, that's fine. But if we're buying four, if just one don't work out, one will work out three, that's 75%, that's below 95%. Therefore, we still have to pay tax. So like once you start identifying, thinking that you want to buy more than three properties, that's where you kind of get a little bit more risky because you have to close on all of them.
Yeah. So I do want to clarify something here. If you're buying a multifamily,
Mm-hmm.
like duplex, triplex, quadruplex, that's one. You're fine
Mm-hmm.
there. And these are properties you're identifying in that 45-day window. So if you say, hey, here are three properties I'm interested in buying,
Mm-hmm.
and you go past that 45-day window, you're in your 180-day window where you're closing on them, you get to a point where you're like, you know what? I actually don't want to close on one of these three. Totally fine. Not a big deal at all. You can close on the other two or just one of them, and nothing happens. You don't have to pay additional taxes. But that money that you were probably going to use for down payments for those other ones does have to still be used in this transaction. So it's not like you can just take that money back. All that money would be going into that one property now instead of those three. So I mean, you can cash out refinance later down the line. That's a whole nother story, but you will be putting more money into one property in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So in our specific case, we want to spread this out a little bit. We have enough money to make it work with multiple properties and down payments all within the same 1031 exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at three, and we're like, oh, three's probably not enough. Maybe four would be better. So we are going past that three property mark that we're talking about. So that's where the 95 and the 200% rule actually matter. So 95% rule, like Julia was talking about, like
Mm-hmm.
unless we're buying 20 properties, so 20 properties, you don't close on one. That's 5%,
Mm-hmm.
of those properties. But in our case, with four, that wouldn't matter. So that's why we're starting very early.
Mm-hmm.
We've already identified, we're a few weeks past our sale dates, and we've already identified four properties that we're interested in. And we're going through the process of inspecting them right now. And if we decide within this 45-day window, hey, we don't want to buy one or two of these properties and we want to swap them out for other ones, we can still do that. We still have that freedom until we hit our 45-day mark, which is super important to us. So, yeah.
Right. So this is kind of the basic rules of a 1031 exchange, and just a little bit about how kind of we did our 1031 exchange and some problems we ran into or stuff we wish we would have known before. So the basic situation, right? We sold one property. The property when we bought it, it was about 200K. By the time we sold it, it's about 300K. But during the holding period, we were able to rent out this property for 3 years. During this period, we actually paid off the 200K loan that we initially had on the property. So after closing costs, this and that, we net gained about $70,000. So in the beginning, we actually thought that we can take back the 200K loan that we paid off and only use a 1031 exchange, the $70,000 capital gain, um,
Mm-hmm.
and reinvest in other properties. But obviously, as we mentioned before, we found out that's not the case. Whether we use all $270,000 in properties, and that is a very large amount of money just for down payment. With that much money, we can buy $1 million house, but that's not what we want to do. We want to buy investment properties and cash flow, and build ourselves up for better future, right? So um, we started very early on, right? We started looking at houses. We hit the ground running once we found out that we need to use all of this money in properties. And then we decided we want to either three or four properties in the 200K to 300K range, which in our area, it has been our sweet spot where we can comfortably cash flow. And they're like more like class like A minus or B type of properties. So you don't like, we're not getting to like really, really nice, but we're not in like the very bottom properties. And Philip did a great job at finding the properties. I'll talk more.
Yeah, absolutely. With these properties, our sweet spot that we've kind of found is,
Mm-hmm.
this gets into the whole like house versus townhome discussion, but we found that townhomes are a lot less work, especially when you have to pay that HOA fee. I know a lot of people hate that, but we actually really like it, especially for investment properties, because it means we don't have to worry about so much stuff that you normally have to worry about with a house.
Right. We'll make another video regarding townhome versus single family properties and why we are now pivoting towards townhome. But yeah, so we have identified 4 properties. Like literally we're like going to check out houses every day after work, like on the weekends, like cancel all the plans. We're like, we're gonna go on a house hunting trip. And our realtor has been very helpful, know the area super, super well, played a very important role in this like portion of like identify real estate property. And then we successfully sold our house. The money went to the third party, the escrow account. So we have not seen the money yet. So like the third party, the escrow, like informed us, hey, we have received $270,000, and they're waiting for us to identify exactly when we're gonna um, close. So like we told them, hey, we want to wait out the 45 days to identify them before we identify all the properties by 45-day mark. Our 4 property, because we had to close on all of them. We want to do house inspections, which is another big part. You want to talk about that, the house inspection, why we have to do it before?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can wait until your 44th day and identify these properties. And you're going to go through the regular home buying procedures where you do a home inspection. And if you get to that point and it's like the 52nd day and you've already decided, hey, I'm going to buy this home, and it's more than 3. Again, if you're 3, you can still drop it. Or the 200% rule. Actually, I do want to touch on that real quick because we haven't talked about it yet. So with the 3 properties, it's 3 properties or this 200% rule that we've been talking about. So the combined value of those properties cannot exceed 200% the value of the relinquished property. So for example, our place will say it's, for easy numbers, 300K. So all of our combined properties can't be more than 600K. So our replacement properties. So that means if we found 3 homes for, 250K each, that's 750K. That's greater than the 200% rule. But it's okay, but it's because it's only 3 properties. But if it's 4 properties or 5 properties, if those properties were to somehow be super cheap individually and be less than the 200% rule, that would also be okay. And you wouldn't have to worry about closing on all of them. But in our case, we're looking at 3 or 4 properties, that are going to add up to well over this, 200% of the original 1 property that we sold. So we also wouldn't fall under that. But anyways, to finish up what we were talking about, the inspection. So yeah, we want to do those inspections now before our 45-day mark so we can decide, hey, we don't want to do this, or like, hey, it's not going to work out because they're not agreeing to fix these things. So if we wait until after that point, we get kind of pigeonholed and we have to buy this property or we're paying taxes. So that would not be great. And then just finishing up on a few of these rules. One thing we didn't mention earlier was the title and ownership. So whoever owns the first property, so in our case, we're married. I owned this first property. So when I sell it, the same taxpayer who sold the relinquished property must acquire the replacement property. So that was one thing, just a nitty gritty that we're working through. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. No access to cash. So like Julia said, you're not going to have access to any of this cash, assuming you don't want to pay taxes or a taxable boot. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Right. Overall, just in conclusion, 1031 exchange has been a very helpful tool. If we don't have this tool, we probably have to pay like 20, 30K in taxes, depending on, we did not look specifically into our state's tax rule. But if we did sell without this, utilizing the 1031 financial exchange tool, we'll be paying a pretty large sum of money. So we appreciate this. We'd rather let our capital continue to do its work for us than to take profit now because we're so young. We just don't need the money right now. So yeah, if you have any question, comments, or concerns, leave it in the comment section below, and then we'll get to it one of these days.
Definitely. All right. Well, catch you in the next one. Thanks, y'all. Bye.